Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, how are my snipers doing today? I hope you guys are doing fantastic. Listen, today we're going to be talking about the one and only Turbo Coin. Ladies and gentlemen, we can see price action has been fairly weak over the last 2 days. Even though there was a rejection off of this very big support zone, boom, if we draw it up like this, we can see, right, the reaction to the upside lasted very, very short. Overall price action is weak. It is the weekend as well. The reason why price action is fairly weak, ladies and gentlemen, is because Bitcoin itself, has very similar price action, and it's just slowly moving up the ranks. Uh, the annoying thing about Bitcoin, though, it did close at around 105,700. So we are near the gap right now. So if we do spike up, that means we are going to have to come back down to fill up the gap. If we're going to be sitting around this area, then we will just continue to monitor what happens. When we go back to Bitcoin, ladies and gentlemen, right? This is something that might take some time. When we go and look at the last time we were here by these zones, we can see that in February, although we were very, very bearish, we did slow down for roughly a month before we broke down, right? And the last time before that we were here, you see we're bouncing off the zone multiple times before we eventually blew to the upside. Now, I do believe, if anything, worst case scenario, we are going to be in this type of stage where we just accumulate, right? That is what I overall believe. If the worst case scenario. Now, obviously, if World War III happens, if things just escalate to a whole nother level, then Turbo's not going to hold these levels. Crypto altcoin season is canceled, right? But that I can't do anything about that. We just have to see how everything unfolds. And yeah, we can see, right, there's a high chance of accumulation around the zone, just because the last few times we did accumulate, is the last time we actually really broke up. We can see the first time we started to accumulate, we went up, we did a fake, and then we went back down, and then we were accumulating, and eventually after almost a month, 3 to 4 weeks, we finally started to go to the upside. So with that being said, hopefully it doesn't take as long, but it's very possible that we will be kind of just in this zone for a while, unless of course Bitcoin does just get revived and continues to go to the upside. Now, like I said, everything was smooth, everything was going according to plan, right? With global liquidity, with structure, until it really wasn't this week. We can see, right, when we take it from these highs to here, it was 91 days. When we take it from these lows to here, it was 91 days, right? And we were following the global liquidity very, very well. If we take it from here, boom, 91 days. The sell-off candle was perfect, 91 days. We knew there was going to be manipulation, boom, manipulation, but we never start to get these pumps, kind of the way kind of like the way global liquidity was pumping to the upside. We kind of just start to go sideways. And to be honest, this weekly candle looks very, very horrible. Now, I'm going to still talk about Bitcoin for just a little bit more, because this is relevant for Turbo. Okay, I'm going to show you two possibilities. And of course, we'll continue to monitor how everything closes and how everything, we'll continue to monitor the technicals. So if we just go and do this, we can see, ladies and gentlemen, we are getting two very, very similar types of scenarios where this price action down here, these candles, they don't look that great. But there was one time where they didn't look that great, which was back in January of 2024, right? We can see there was like 3 weeks of candles that didn't look that wow, despite this liquidity sweep. And then we can see we actually did go to the upside. But here's the other thing, ladies and gentlemen, right? There was also something similar another time where things didn't look great and we sold off. Now, here's the deal. At that point, global liquidity was against us, while global liquidity is still for us. So, there's a chance that we are playing out this type of scenario over here, right? Something similar before we go to the upside. But do not live and die by that. We obviously need more confirmation. So what does that mean for Turbo? Well, ladies and gentlemen, of course, if we are going to slow down a little bit, then what that does mean is, probably accumulation and then eventually reversals. Now, here's the one good thing, right? Here's the one good thing If we look at the last few sell candles of Turbo, we can see, right, the selling pressure is overall weak, right? The biggest selling pressure we had was 2 weeks ago and then 5 weeks ago, right? Which makes sense. 5 weeks ago, of course, after a big pump and a couple more pumps, some type of selling pressure makes sense. Then, not the strongest selling pressure, then pretty good selling pressure, given the relative context. And then the last 2 weeks have been getting smaller and smaller. And we can see, right, we still have not engulfed any of this, right? We still have not engulfed this much of this candle left. And we can overall see that three candles that are buying pressure and, buy candles are way bigger than these 5 selling candles. So, other than structure, other than still global liquidity, this is also another sign that we are still fairly bullish, and we're just playing out the structure, and we're just playing out, looking to be supporting and this zone, right? Ultimately. Now, here is the deal. I have seen some people say that, Turbo could be going lower to fill up these imbalances over here. Now, I mean, the last time we filled up imbalances were back when we were at the bottoms, right? And they filled up all of it. And if we were to get something similar, we could in theory go down to 0.0023. I am, I'm not sure if it's going to necessarily happen. Of course, if we're going to be bearish, then yes, it will get filled. But as of right now, I'm just going to monitor this big, massive zone. Okay, we're just going to monitor this big, massive zone. We can also see, ladies and gentlemen, right, if we go and take, something like this, where we go back here, we can see there's some imbalance for Turbo 2, right? And then, of course, there's a few previous daily candles. They don't have too much imbalance. We can see, for the most part, most of the imbalance, they get filled. Now, if you take a Fibonacci tool from, this point down to the bottoms, we did almost, we went past the 88, right? The Fibonacci tool is slightly relative, right? It is slightly relative. So, it's always going to come down to the user and what they believe. If we start taking it from the momentum, it starts going up. And from the literal top, we can see we're between 70 and 88% retracement. So if we did something similar, right? If we took it from the top here, boom, and let's say to this, we're not going to count this little one, but let's say this one and these, right? Then we could potentially be seeing 0.0029 upwards of 0.0026, somewhere in this zone. Overall, ladies and gentlemen, for me, in the long term, I am still bullish. I still believe there's an altcoin season. The only thing that could literally ruin everything is a World War III, right? So obviously, we don't want that happening, for multiple reasons, but just in terms of the finance world, it's going to be very, very devastating. But yeah, that is it, ladies and gentlemen. Do not get discouraged too bad. We can see that every time Turbo has actually made some type of pumps, it sells off quite a bit. It kind of just goes sideways and then again pump, right? Sells off a bit, sideways, and then again pump. So, we did pump. We are going down. Now we should start going sideways soon, and then we should expect another pump. Once again, as long as the world does not blow up. But as a ladies and gentlemen, I hope you guys did enjoy, and I'll talk to you guys next time. Goodbye.